I have to explain why it's so important to incorporate laws of physics with laws of engineering, electrical or mechanical or even electronic engineering. One of the basic and fundamental things in the universe is called second laws of thermodynamics. And that is so important that the whole universe is governed by the second laws of thermodynamics. Like in my case, when I have an electric motor, there are so many things has to be taken into the consideration, and one of them is air drag. It's exactly like airplane. Even though it's a small rotor, but it is always going through the, it's doing some work and is pushing the air aside. So air drag is one important thing, and the second one is the friction, and there is no way I can stop the friction, because no matter how I use the best ball bearing, again I will have some friction. And even the sound is unwanted. And the worst thing is the heat. But laws of thermodynamics, especially the second one, says I had to do so many physics experiments, and the most important one was like a pendulum. And I remember 11 years ago I was in Regis University. I was demonstrating how the earth rotates by that famous person, Léon Foucault, the French guy. And then people were amazed how I spent not even 1 penny, everything was recycled. But I said, you have to remember always, you have to think about the second laws of thermodynamics. When I release the pendulum, it doesn't matter where, even in moon, there is no gravity like Earth, there is no atmosphere, again we have disorder. So second law tells us that no matter how you do it, when you put 100% input, you are not going to get 100% output. It is almost impossible. Well, of course, you can get 100% in, get 90%, and that is important because you are improving the efficiency. I remember the old days when the Newcomen, that was amazing guy, amazing. He invented in 19th century the steam engine, and people were so happy. That was industrial revolution. They did not realize that had only 3% output. Well, so what happened to the 97%? And James Watt was a very educated person. He came over and said, hey, you have to cool everything in a different chamber. He improved everything. I'm 70 years old. All my life I have seen in computers, in automobiles, in electrical engineering, in electronics, in electric motors. If we invent something, after a few months we have to do modification. Why the human beings are so smart, we cannot think of that modification at the first place. That's the way it is. I have seen some computers so huge, you cannot help it. You buy a computer, after a few months or few years, this is obsolete, you have to buy a new one. I was 28 years old, I was in Los Angeles in college, and that was the best day in my life. We went to a lab, you may not believe. At that time, they were using tubes instead of the transistors and then the solid state technology, and they kept it on purpose. That was a huge room, and that room, guess what? That was a radio, and they did it on purpose. And honest to God, it like a sauna. You could not even enter the room because the output was so bad, the heat was so bad, the efficiency was almost zero. So the reason why they kept that, they want to show a student that how. When Mr. John Bardeen, great scientist, he got 2 Nobel Prizes in physics, he invented the transistor. And transistor changed our life. Transistor is what? It's just a switch, but it's not ordinary switch. So as you can see, Michael Faraday did, his electric motor was 200, mine is now 7,000 RPM. So it's always place for improvement. When I talk about the second laws of thermodynamics, it is so important. I don't want to go so in details because some terms might not be familiar for you guys, and in physics we call it counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense. Whenever you have like a motion, always is followed by the second laws of thermodynamics. It means that you have disorder, and you have some entropy. And entropy was the term was coined by the German physicist Rudolf Clausius, and that is absolutely true. Even in our universe, see, we have entropy. Our sun is not as young as when I was born 70 years ago, but I cannot tell. The reason why, every second millions of kilograms of matter is converted to energy, and then the hydrogen becomes helium, and then we get little part of it, which is sunshine, and then we're happy. But poor sun is going through the laws of thermodynamics, because nothing is perpetual. But you know, in our life, we never think that we're going to have another 5 or 6 billion years of thing. So I'm thinking always we can improve it. And one thing in my mind, which is so important, is called kinetic energy. Why do I emphasize on a higher RPM? I'll show you guys. This is one of the most important formulas in physics. I would say it's almost as famous as EMC squared. So what it says, kinetic energy is half of the mass times the velocity. So imagine, if I unroll my rotor, it's going to be exactly like the magnet trains. So if I unroll this, and then the stator is here, and then if I unroll this, this is going to be south, north, south, north. So we can also use the same formula. If I increase my, let's say, velocity from 4,000 to 6,000, because this velocity is double, or in other words, is times by itself. This is square, so 6,000 by 6,000, 36,000. If I increase my mass from 350 to 400, that's going to be a lot. So the kinetic energy is going to be. So I'm always emphasizing on higher RPM because it's so important. Most of the time I go buy a car, and then we discuss in science for the, salesman, and in fact they're so good. They say, sir, this is 400 or 250 horsepower when it has 5,000 RPM, this car. But when it goes to 6,000 RPM, this has at least 40 more horsepower. Well, of course I do understand that, and they explain. I said, well, don't worry about that. You don't have to explain. I'm a physics person. I do understand. But what I mean, this is the most important part. I like to improve the velocity. But how I can do these things? One thing crossing my mind is miniaturization. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago when I saw that huge place in Los Angeles, nowadays they can have large scale integration in probably few millimeters. They can have thousands of transistors. Nowadays this life is different, and it's amazing how long we've gone. Why miniaturization is so important? Because imagine, I am using everything which is recycled. Like this rod, I have no choice. I removed this from the photocopy machine, and this rod itself is almost like 100 grams. So I could reduce it like the other motors and make it smaller. But to be honest with you, one day I'm considering after this video, I might be able to use ferromagnetic, because I did extensive experiment with ferromagnetic, especially iron. And if you remember a few minutes ago, I mentioned when you have electricity in copper and silver, it's exactly you have magnetic field in iron. So iron can improve the magnetic field sometimes 300, 400%. That is amazing. So hopefully next time you see my video, you can see I have some lamination of iron in my new electric motor. And like I said, I have to get the curved magnet, and that's so important, and the factory makes everything real good. And like I said, I reduced the loss of aerodynamic, and even I said the friction, and you may even be surprised. I might even say, get my product to NASA in Virginia, say, well, I want this in a wind tunnel. Of course, they're going to laugh at me and say, why do you need this in a wind tunnel? And all the things, little things, even like a golf club is tested in a wind tunnel. It doesn't have to be airplane. It can be anything. So we might do that, if we have to. And like I said, the kinetic energy is so important. Once this rotor overcomes the inertia, because see, laws of physics tells me if this is 350 grams, it is accelerated toward the center of the earth. And imagine, the gravity has nothing to do. The determining factor is the mass. Mass determines how much gravity I need. If I have this 700, so imagine it's going to be double. So the gravity is not double, but the acceleration toward the center of the earth is going to be double. In other words, we call this weight or mass, which is the same thing, Albert Einstein said in equivalence of, in a principle of equivalence, mass and weight are the same in space. So those are real things. And like I said, my electric motor, because everything is recycled, it wobbles a little bit, which is not good. And then I have more friction, which is not good. They get hot, which is not good. Well, of course, all these things have to be taken into the consideration. And hopefully, I'm thinking, if we make a deal with the factory, they have all those tools in their disposal, we will be able to do this maybe 15,000 or 20,000 RPM, which is so good. And I did my best when I'm talking about the coils. If you remember, a few minutes ago I talked about these coils, and this is factory made, and they are 8 layers. And how could you expect such a small coil has 700 Gauss? But my coil, see how big it is, it has only 1000 Gauss. So I will never ever be able to do like a factory, because this is done by machine. Mine is by hand. And the humans are not as good as machines. So there is no way, but like I said, always there is a time, there is a place for improvement. So we can do that, and hopefully I'm going to put my email, my cell phone number and everything else. And unfortunately I could not explain everything. It's too hot here, and this is the new science lab. It is extremely hot here. Now I'm talking to you, I'm just sweating like I'm in a gym. So anytime you have any questions, you can ask me, and hopefully I'm working with a company, and then I can prove that this is a good thing, and this is amazing product. We can improve it maybe 90% more. And one thing I also have to mention, all my theories, like a charged particles, theory of separation of the charges, and Earth's electric field, theory of free falling objects, and the planets and everything else, always everything is substantiated by experiment. That is so important, because Galileo and all those, Sir Isaac Newton, they said, if you do not experiment, it's not valid. How could you tell something works? You have to have the experiment. Well, I'm not talking about the planets. I'm talking about electric laws and then laws of physics and so on. So hopefully I proved my point that this is a good product and it can work for the future. And if you have any comment, you can let me know, because always I need your feedback. One of the most important laws of physics tells us if there is no oscillation, you will not, there is no feedback, there is no way you can have oscillation. And my best example is the tank circuit, is a capacitor and inductor. Inductor is giving the energy to capacitor, capacitor is discharged back and forth and back and forth. Even in subatomic level, like electron level, they are losing their energies. There is no way, nothing is perpetual, so always you need to bring the new energy. But as you decrease this, unwanted things, and then you increase the efficiency. That is so important. So I have so many things in my mind. Hopefully I can go ahead and make a video and send you guys, and then you can have a look. And then I always respect your feedback. I know you guys are good in science. You let me know that Vahan, this part we like you to correct you. You can improve a little bit more. I respect, I honor your idea, and I say, okay, I'm the physics experimentalist. I can put it to work. Thank you and goodbye.